All right, Islam. Um, so we're back. So getting back into it with that in mind, you know what I mean. When we're looking at these things going on in the news and we're saying, oh, they're shooting us down like dogs, you know what I mean, this, that, and the third. Well, based on Romantis Pontifex and Dum Diversas, which I'll pull that up right quick, which is kind of long, which I'll give you guys a chance to look over in your own time. But when you look at these documents and you're able to get a firm grasp of what they're saying in terms of their historical relevance in the timeline that is, world history, you're going to find out that prior to that, there wasn't this big push like you see coming out of Christendom that was able to last this long. There wasn't this mass conversion, so to speak, at the level and at the degree to which that it was carried out in this particular instance, because it was this particular instance, these sets of occurrences that led it led to the fall of Granada, right, in 1492, because we're talking about back in 1452. So it took them almost roughly 40 years, give or take, to implement their particular policy and then to carry it out, right? So let's just round up and say 50 years, give or take, so half a century. So if it takes about half a century, right, for certain changes to happen, well then it might take another half a century for those changes to really solidify. So then if you look at the timeline after 1492 and look at that first 50 years after 1492 and all the crazy stuff that was going on then, and the retaliation and this, that, and going, so on, you will see again more war, more fighting, but this new level, this newfound thing of the Western slave trade coming from Europeans now, not just from Moors or quote unquote Arabs, but now from Europeans on a mass scale, was really just kind of beginning in terms of the being an idea. Because prior to that, who was ruling in this era prior to 1492, right? Go back and find that out. We already know it was the Moors. But really, go back and find out how they got there. Really look at, how Muhammad came. Look at what Jesus was talking about in Revelations and see how those prophecies from Jesus were carried out by Muhammad and later carried out, further by the prophet, Noble Drew Ali. So, when we talk about Moorish science and we talk about it being a complete idea and understanding of things, it's going to take time to get around that that circle, to get around those degrees. And in previous conversations that I've been having with Moors, there's been a lot of issues with Masons and or Eastern Stars, right? So with that, keep in mind, and I'm gonna grab a book right quick, but I just want you guys to keep in mind that the Moors originally gave the science of masonry to the Europeans, right? We were the original, harbingers or oracles, so to speak. We were the ones who maintained that ancient science in written as well as oral traditions, right? Mainly oral, though, going back, so many generations to the point that it's innumerable. But let me grab this book right quick, and I want to touch on some things that I think may help. You know what I mean? So let's get into it. Just so everybody's on the same page, because oftentimes we get thrown off because we're not on the 8 ball, so to speak, and we miss miss certain key things in our third grade to fourth grade education. You know, first to third grade, kindergarten, all of that good stuff. And it's those basics that oftentimes as adults we miss. And so, you know, just like one more thing, just like being able, just like when they call us minors, right? And we sign these documents that only aliens are really supposed to be signing. And, you know, when we get into legal definitions, we find out that an alien is a foreigner. And we know that, you know, a minor is somebody who's technically supposed to be a child, really, in his mind. But they'll connotatively, well, denotatively, it's supposed to be someone who's a child or childlike or incapacitated, you know, incompetent. Or someone who's, quote unquote, a youth or, you know, not of age for certain things, or the ages of maturity. But, you know, that's all relative to whatever culture, you know, whatever context you're talking about. But, you know, for the sake of conversation, let's say 18 and 21, right? For the female, 18 for the females, 21 for the males. All right. But when we're talking about, you know, who it is that we are as Moors, we have to understand, and I made a post about this on, you know, social media, if you follow me on some of the, you know, the different things, about, you know, the fact that we are part as Moors, right? When you're talking about the national side, right? And you're talking about, hey, you know, we'll back up and we'll talk about, you know, 222141 and all that good stuff. But just for, you know, for the sake of concept yet again, we are officers, right? We have certain judicial, you know, administrative or executive, rather, pardon my French, we have certain executive offices, certain judicial offices, and certain legislative offices that as Moors, naturally, right, we have the right and, you know, ability to claim and maintain if we have that consciousness and if we're, you know, studious enough to be able to maintain that, because of course you have to be able to maintain whatever it is that you're claiming to be. Otherwise, you're just, you know, running a fraud. So, Black's Law Dictionary, you know, 4th edition, you know, for those who aren't familiar, Moor, an officer in the Isle of Man, who summons the courts for the several sheddings. The office is similar to the English bailiff of 100, right? So then you say, you know, similar to the English bailiff of 100. Well, you know, that sounds pretty, you know, interesting. And then you go and look on a map and, you know, you see something over there, quote unquote, near England. And, you know, you may just leave it there if you know, are not more studious or don't have the eyes to see, the ears to hear, so to speak. But just one thing I really wanted to touch on, and kind of read to you guys from this post, and hopefully you guys can see it on the screen, because it is kind of small. Shout out to Shy Diddy 26 on Instagram, you know, always dropping the knowledge. But I'm gonna try to show you, you know, the picture and everything after I read this to you guys. But I just wanted to try to get this on the record, right? So it says, quote, Moors in the Isle of Man, who summon the courts for the several sheddings, comma, are the lords bailiffs, comma, called by that name. And every Moor has the like office with our bailiff of the 100. King's description, Isle of Man, right? And then it says, taken from Law Dictionary explaining the rise, progress, and present state of the English law, defining and interpreting the terms or words of art, and compromising copious information on the subjects of law, trade, and government. Originally compiled by Giles Jacob, corrected by and greatly enlarged by T.E. Tomlins of the Inner Temple Barristers at Law, the 2nd edition, with considerable additions in 2 volumes, Volume 1, 1835, right? And so then it's got this little picture here, which let me, you know, try to lighten it up here. make sure that you guys can see the screen. Right, so let me hold it up just so you guys can try to see the picture. Right, so check that out. Now look what they got on. Right, and I'm gonna find a way to get this up on ActiveSpace so you guys can see this. But check that out. Look what kind of outfits they got on. Right, for all y'all on the YouTube. Look at this. What does that look like? See turbans. See some fezzes. You know. And you see clearly crowns. Lots of, royal guard, right? So, we're talking about an office in the Isle of Man. So let me just go back and read this particular definition. Not the Black's Law 4th, but just from this particular, little link right here from, the social media post, right? Moors, quote Moors, right? All caps, and let me show you guys what I'm reading, right below there. Show you guys. Zoom in. You see that right below there? If you follow me on Instagram, you'll see it. This is all up there. Anyway, Moors in the Isle of Man who summon the courts for the several sheddings are the Lord's bailiffs, called by that name, and every Moor has the like office with our bailiff. So the like office, every Moor has the like office with our bailiff of the 100. King's description of the Isle of Man, right? And then we jump over here to the Black's Law 4th edition, and it says, an officer in the Isle of Man who summons the courts for the several sheddings. The officer is similar to the English bailiff of 100. Huh. Man, now, when we jump over to Google, right, and just see what they say about what a bailiff is, right, let me just screenshot you guys so you can see it. Just for connotative, references. A bailiff is a noun, a person who performs certain actions under legal authority in particular, right? This says North American, an official in a court of law who keeps order, looks after prisoners, etc. Now, etc. would imply that there's more to it, wouldn't it? Isn't that what that means? That there's more to the job? Right, etc. And let's see if I can find it right quick. If not, we're not going to press it. But I just want to, show that to you guys, and then let's jump down. Latin original. So its origin was Latin. Bejulus, carrier, manager. Old French, bailiff, Middle English, bailiff. Right, going all the way back to the 1800s, from according to to the Googles. Now, when you see the British, hold on, sorry, when you see the British right here, it says a sheriff's officer who executes writs and processes and carries out distraints and arrest. The agent or steward of a landlord. The agent or steward of a landlord. Agent or steward of a landlord. So Moors are the agents or stewards of a landlord. And later, when we get into it, I can show you how we are the landlords. So interesting. So we've got these particular positions. We've got a certain judicial authority. We know that it has to do with order, maintaining order, and in so many words, being the law. All right. But the point that we're trying to drive here with our review is going to lead us to my next favorite document, Civic Lesson 14. For all those who've never seen this or can't find it, check it out, rvbaypublications.com. Wonderful, wonderful site. Plenty of information. Now, there was a guy who, from my understanding, and I may be wrong, but from my studies and understandings, he had a lot of close connections with Noble Drew Ali in his time period. Not as I understand it, he had some of the original keys that came out of the adept chamber. And from that understanding, he placed some things in the record with the Library of Congress. And this man, of course, is known as the man C.M. Bate. Now, something that I wanted to touch on, because we're talking about, just to stick with the theme of being an officer, or, having certain judicial, rights and duties and things, when we understand who Moors are, and the full vastness and the scope of it, we've got to talk about Title 22, Chapter 2, Section 141, right, which is coming, of course, from the codes of law of a general and permanent character, right? This is from January 3rd, 1935, 34 edition, right? Copy of it for the record. So, and this of course is on, they've got that out there. If you get into a good law library, if you can find a 1940s edition, or better, or earlier rather, you may be able to find it in there. But anything after that, I want to say around 56, give or take. I'm horrible with dates. I'm not a history buff, for the record. I just look like one. But AA 2221, right? Foreign relations. So this is Title 22, Chapter 2, Section 141. Without further ado, Foreign Relations and Intercourse, page 954, right? Chapter 2, Consular Courts, Section 141, Judicial Authority generally, right? To carry into full effect the provisions and treaties of the United States with certain foreign countries, right? Certain foreign countries. I wonder which foreign countries they're talking about. Let's see if they mention them. So Title 22, Foreign Relations, right? Judicial Authority generally, 141. If you're following along with me, to carry into full effect the provisions of the treaties of the United States with certain foreign countries. Period. The ministers, this is very important, the ministers and consuls of the United States in China, Siam, Turkey, Morocco, Muscat. Hold on, let's back up. The ministers and consuls. Now, when you talk about church, oftentimes they will divinely call them ministers, right? And when you look at, how things are set up as far as, government and everything, you will find administration, and when, a woman, throughout her cycle and everything has her menses, that's also known as menstruation. Again, another form of divine order in process, right? Let me reset the room here. So, all of these things, so we're back. So yeah, all of these things are talking about order, on a higher level or divine level or a more mundane level, right? So for the sake of conversation today, let's keep it, in terms of prophet, divine and national, right? So the divine side might be termed as ministers, those acting on the, national side may be termed as consul, right? And there's various titles in between, of course. We're just talking about the language here at Section 141. But it says, getting back into it, ministers and consuls of the United States. And let me just reset right quick just to make sure that the room is, all in order. Because, we sometimes have some technical difficulties going on in the background, but, we're not gonna try to hold that, up too much. So they'll catch up, if not, you'll see it on YouTube. So, United States with certain foreign countries, the ministers and consuls of the United States in China, Siam, Turkey, Morocco, Muscat, Abyssinia, right, Persia, and the territories formerly a part of the former Ottoman Empire, including Egypt. Now realize Abyssinia is the name, is the older name or more ancient name of modern day Ethiopia, right? And that's part of why the prophet said we're not Ethiopians. But, for quantitative linguistics, we say Ethiopians just so people know who we're talking about. But it's really Abyssinians. But anyway, And if you go deeper, of course, you'll find other names, and as more information comes out, that'll our understanding will develop and grow, so on and so forth. Anyway, and the territories formerly a part of the former Ottoman Empire, including Egypt, duly appointed, right? So there's some delegation of authority going on. Duly appointed to reside therein, shall, in addition to other powers and duties imposed upon them, respectively, by the provisions of such treaties, respectively, be invested with judicial authority described in this chapter, which shall appertain to the office of minister and consul, right? And be a part of the duties belonging thereto, wherein and so far as the same is allowed by treaty, and in accordance with the usages of the countries in their intercourse with the Franks and other foreign Christian nations, right? And that's important because you want to pay attention to the other treaties that the Moors signed with these other foreign Christian nations, as well as the Franks, right? Because in that you're going to find other customs and usages that may, be of use or maybe of some guidance of sorts in your studies. So, skipping ahead because I just really wanted to touch on that. This is kind of a review. I'll let you guys go back and see section 142 and 143 for yourself. But just so you know, for quick references, 142 generally deals with jurisdiction in criminal cases, right? And then 143 generally deals with jurisdiction in civil cases. So, excuse me. That's where you're going to want to start if you are looking for what to do in terms of how to proceed, how to stretch your legs out. You're going to want to find out, what body of law they're talking about. Is this a criminal case? Is this a civil case? Are all crimes commercial? Find that out on your own in due time. Article 6, right? Got to get this on the record. Got to, every time. Article 6, Constitution of the United States of America. All debts contracted. All debts contracted, past tense, and engagements entered into, past tense, before the adoption of this Constitution, shall be valid against the United States under this Constitution as under the Confederation. So that's it. All past, all for then, for now. Nunc pro tunc. All right, as under the Confederation. This Constitution, so the Confederation, Confederation has to do with the Republican form of government, right? Why are they talking about democracy yet again? That's just for review. Anyway, this Constitution and the laws of the United States, which shall be made in pursuance thereof, and all treaties made or which shall be made under the authority of the United States, shall be the supreme law of the land, and the judges in every state shall be bound thereby. Anything in the Constitution, notice there's a space, anything in the Constitution, or in this version I'm reading, anything in the Constitution, or the laws of any state to the contrary, notwithstanding, right? Meaning it has no standing at law, right? So anything they come up with, any code, any ordinance, any local rules or regulations to the contrary of this provision, this second paragraph here, notwithstanding, buddy, not going to pass, not on duty. The senators and the representatives before mentioned and the members, several state legislatures, shout out to Mike Else, by the way, and several state legislatures and all executive and judicial officers, both of the United States and of the several states, shall be bound by oath or affirmation. Should be bound by oath or affirmation? To support this Constitution, but no religious test shall ever be required as a qualification to any office or public trust under the United States. Or public trust, Now, public trust. Interesting topic. Everybody loves to talk about it. Trusts are very important. But for the sake of conversation, and again, for the sake of review, we've got to talk about, where these concepts come from. So when we talk about trust, or trust as we understand it in today's terms, we're talking about 9 times out of 10, or we can point to what's known as the Cestui Que Vie Trust Act of 1666, right? Now, this particular, I'm pulling it up on 2 different sites because I want to read, certain things, just so you guys can, see what I'm looking at and what I found. So, and I'm going to walk you guys who are in the classroom through it, just so you guys can see, right? So you can look this up, in your own time. So I just typed in Cestui Que Vie Trust Act 1666, right? And so these first 2 things that came up, that's what I hit right here, right? So this first one here, this Exodus, right? Just want to read this right here. London, 1666, during the Black Plague of the Great Fires of London, Parliament enacted an act behind closed doors called Cestui Que Vie, Cestui Que Vie Act 1666. The act being debated was to subrogate the rights of men and women, meaning all men and women were declared dead, lost at sea / beyond the sea, back then operating in admiralty law, the law of the sea, or soul lost at sea, right? And notice that the Pope, and the Vatican calls itself or acts under the auspices of the Holy See, right? And then you have the dollar bill and the all-seeing eye, right, which is supposed to be, representative of that pineal gland that sits over your 2 eyes are right up in here somewhere, or sorts, give or take. I may be wrong, but anyway, I'll let you guys again do your own studies, do your own research. The state London took custody of everybody and their property into a trust. The state became the trustee / husband, holding all titles to the people and property until a living man comes back to reclaim those titles. He can also claim damages. It says when capital letters, and this is Moors already understand, when capital letters or all capital letters are used anywhere in the name, this always refers to a legal entity / fiction, company or corporation, no exceptions, right? So Cestui Que Trust, pronounced Cestui Que or Cestui Que, common term in New Zealand and Australia. Straw man, common term in the United States of America or Canada, right? So I'll let you guys, check that out. Notice it's got a lot of other good info there. But of course, always cross-reference. Now, this is a little bit more interesting, if I don't say so myself, because this is off of legislation.gov.uk, right? So this is, again, not new Najee. This is just what I found in my research. So let's just read this for the record. An act for, so this is Cestui Que Vie Act 1666 for all those, 1666 chapter 11, 18, and 19, chapter 2, or CHA2. An act for redress and inconveniencies by want of proof of the deceases of persons beyond the seas, or absenting themselves, upon whose lives estates do depend. Recital that Cestui Que Vies have gone beyond sea, and that reversioners cannot find out whether they are alive or dead. Whereas diverse lords of manors and others have granted estates, right? Granted estates by lease for one or more life or lives, or else for years determinable upon one or more life or lives, and it hath often happened that such person or persons for whose life or lives such estates have been granted have gone beyond the sea, on the seas, or so absented themselves for many years that the lessers and reversioners cannot find out whether such person or persons be alive or dead, by reason whereof such lessers and reversioners have been held out of possession of their tenements for many years after all the lives upon which such estates depend are dead in regard that the lessors and reversioners, when they have brought actions for the recovery of their tenements, have been put upon it to prove the death of their tenements, when it is almost impossible for them to discover the same, for remedy of which mischief so frequently happening to such lesser or reversioners, right? And it goes on to say, other things and so on. But I just wanted to get that into the record, to kind of, again, give some more context to what I'm going to say here. But they mentioned a word that's very, very important, and I want to make sure that we get this into the record. Reversioner, right? And this is an interesting concept, that as you get into the science, and is those of you all who've been studying from Taj, and shouts out and honors to everybody who's been given honors and praise for the work that he's done over the years, in spite of all the haters and naysayers. We have right here with this word reversioner a lot of potent latent activity, and if we can have a firmer understanding, if we can begin to get a better understanding of trust law, I think that this word will have more and more meaning, right, going forward. So reversioner, a person who is entitled to an estate in reversion, right? And then by an extension, and I just wanted to place where reversion was, by an extension of its meaning, comma, one who is entitled to any future estate or any property in expectancy, right? Right under it says revert, to turn back, comma, to return to. Then it says with respect to property, to go back to and lodge in former owner. To lodge in, right? To stay, to live, or to reside, okay? To lodge in former owner, to put with former owner who parted with it by creating estate in another which has expired, or to his heirs. In a loose way, the term, quote, revert to, end quote, is sometimes used in a will as the equivalent of, quote unquote, go to, and where the language of a will so indicates, it will be construed as used to designate the person to whom the testator wished the land to be given, right? And when we talk about, property law, oftentimes you'll hear the word of reverter, or you'll often hear the phrase, you might run into the phrase of a possibility of reverter. So reverter means reversion, which we just, which we're gonna, I'm gonna give a definition to in a second here. Reversion, a possibility of reverter, is that species of reversionary interest which exists when the grant is so limited that it may possibly terminate, right? Which, as Moors, we're not really dealing with a possibility of reverter, because our right to re-enter our estate never terminates, because the prophet has already reestablished it. He's already put it in the form of an express trust. Islam. And if you think there isn't an express trust, just go online to the Cook County website. Check out, punch in the numbers for our authority, trust. And if you've got the document, and I might have it on hand here, if I can get to it, in a reasonable amount of time, and read it off to you guys. But punch it in, and you're gonna see where other people have made various entries and amendments to the trust. And if you understand, trust law, you can make amendments if you are a party, for the sake of, if you're a necessary party, right? In this case, if you're an heir to the estate, right? Or you've been vested with the rights of an heir, so to speak, right? So reversion, or estate in reversion. And this is, again, I'm on page 1483, Black's Law 4th edition, unabridged for you guys. So and I'm just going to give the short version here and let you guys go check it out, you know, for those who want to get more in depth. But the residue of an estate left by operation of law in the grantor or his heirs, or in the heirs of a testator, comma, commencing in possession on the determination of a particular estate granted or devised. Right? Any future interest left in a transferor or his successor. It is a vested interest or estate in as much as person entitled to it has a fixed right to future employment. Right? Well, I'll just go in and read it. You know, it's actually pretty short because I just didn't want to get into all of this other stuff and confuse you guys. But the rest of the definition here says the term reversion has two meanings. First is designating the estate left in the grantor during the continuance of a particular estate, and also the residue left in grantor or his heirs after termination of particular estate, right? It differs from a remainder in that it arises by act of law, whereas a remainder is by act of the parties. A reversion, moreover, is the remnant left in the grantor, whilst a remainder is the remnant of the whole estate disposed of after a preceding part of the same has been given away. All right, and realize that when the prophet restated that he was the head of the temple and he was the head of everything, in so many words, that was leaving everything in his possession, right? So that those who came after the fact, anybody who even attempted to, and when the prophet in the oral service, the prophet said, you know, I gave you something, you know, that you couldn't tear up, but it would tear you up. That's kind of my understanding of what he was talking about. Because with you know, when you understand, you know, the levels of trust law and the effects of it, if the grantor still retains the property and he hasn't given everything away per se, then there's something still yet to be received for, you know, others down the line. Right? Because if, say, you know, Uncle Junebug and them got a hold of the house, and, you know, instead of paying, you know, this is say for quantitative linguistics, they stopped paying the property taxes on it, and the state came in and took it. You know what I mean? Now that house is no longer in the family. The state owns it, and, you know, it doesn't pass down, you know, the to the rest of the family, to the children. Because Junebug wasn't taking care of business, right, with the family trust or the estate. So when you're talking about property, Junebug doesn't own the property. When you're talking about how the prophet left it, right, and in that case, if the property was, you know, was taken by the estate, that would be called an escheatment. Islam, thank you for you know, those in the chat here. You remind me of that. That would be called an escheatment. Right? And we'll get that into the, you know, to the records. Another one of my favorite words. But when you're talking about, again, property, and you're talking about what's given away, if everything hasn't been given away, like I said, there's something still retained. There's something to be left by operation of law to the heirs, right? Meaning that the rest of the property or whatever hasn't been escheated by processes of feudal law remains to those who, you know, have the right to receive it, right? And oftentimes when we talk about, you know, suits and wanting to reclaim certain things or certain properties, we're looking at it from the wrong perspective, right? We're not reclaiming something in the sense that we're looking at we're looking at this something that we're claiming as something that was not already previously owned by us, right? We're looking at it in the sense that, no, this is the family house that we've always owned, that's always been in our family for generations upon generations upon generations. I am just the youngest, you know, or the eldest of the youngest, to be in the position to say, hey, this is mine, and this is what's for my, you know, for my children and my posterity. All right, and that's what we're doing when we're reclaiming what the prophet left us. in a nutshell. We're stepping up to the plate. We're taking our place amongst the affairs of men to manage the estate, right? As trustees, as ministers, as consuls, you know, and other various, you know, degrees and capacities, right? But it's cheap, right? Again, from our Black's Law, 4th edition, yet again, page 604. It's cheap. In feudal law, right? In feudal law, it's cheap is an obstruction of the course of descent and consequent determination of the tenure by some unforeseen contingency, in which case the land naturally results back by a kind of reversion, right? Kind meaning it's not the original. By a kind of reversion, comma, to the original grantor or lord of the fee. All right? In the casual or causal descent, comma, in the nature of forfeiture of lands and tenements within his manor to a lord, either on failure of issue of the tenement dying, seized, or on account of the felony of such tenant, right? Uh-oh, got some connection errors. Let me just reset that right quick. And we're going to finish this definition right out right quick. And it's 7:22, so we're almost coming up at the half point mark. And then, you know, I'm going to want to open it up for questions. So let's see. All right. So yeah, in the grand scheme of things, you know, again, we're trying to prevent escheatment, right? We're trying to acknowledge where escheatment has happened, and then reverse that by making a claim, putting a claim of reversion on top of that, right? Because it's that claim of reversion, it's standing in our birthrights, being ourselves, being, you know who we are, being the truth and standing on the truth, that by simple process of law entitles us to the vast estate, right? So that when we're talking about doing other things with the vast estate, it's not a question of, you know, who owns it anymore. It's just a matter of which one of the Moors owns this portion, or which one of the Moors is maintaining or controlling this portion for the good of society, right? Because as Bays, you know, laws enforcers, and the Eels, lawgivers, you know, we're supposed to rule the land. So that society, you know, civilization can be maintained and, you know, can continue. But when man, you know, does man in such a way that is inhumane, is unjust, then oftentimes you will you'll run into problems. You know what I mean? You get conflict. When you don't look at your fellow man as your fellow man, and you there's always this othering, you know, that happens where I am human, but you're something else. You're from somewhere else, you know, of something else. You know, at the end of the day, that I, you know, have no being, you know, nothing to do with. And we all know that's a fallacy, because when we get into, you know, the science and the mathematics of things, you know, we know that everything can be reduced down to numbers. And we know that the quote-unquote elements of life in the world, of the universe, right, are all within man, right? All of the things that are in the stars reside within you. You know what I mean? All of, you know, in so many different ways and so many different, you know, stages and phases, so to speak. You are the universe. You know what I mean? And everything that happens at the macro level, you know, you are a representation of on the micro level. You know what I mean? And vice versa. So if you want to know, you know, how to control the universe and the world around you, you have to begin to control yourself. You know what I mean? You have to be able to maintain yourself. Otherwise, you'll constantly be trying to do something that's not not even feasible at the end of the day. Why? Because you are too busy trying to do other things that at the end of the day don't even reside within you. You're not reaching from a place that's even attainable. In so many words, you're reaching from the inside to get to the outside, and that only can be done metaphysically. That only can be done in the workshop of the mind. You know what I mean? Because I in my lifespan, probably could travel the world, but I could get there a whole lot faster with my mind. You know what I mean? With the power of visualization, right? I would be able to get to the sun a lot, faster than 8 minutes if I imagine myself there, right? Or if I imagine myself, moving from one spot to the next, or if I imagine myself having a particular experience prior to it already coming about. That's what true manifestation is, or at least that's what it entails from my understanding. When you want to, get to the root cause, it's always going to lead back to you. It's always going to lead back to man. So don't ever be scared to study yourself. Don't ever be afraid to, want to learn more about yourself or to look into, the things of the past that happened to you, or to, like some people that are really scared to look at their zodiac charts or their wheels. And, because they have various, connotative understandings of it that have nothing to do with the actual facts, the circumstances and the situation. And oddly enough, I'm locked out of my own room here. That's interesting. So whoever is in the room, they need to go on and let me back in my room. I'm not going to be locking this anymore. But so we've got that going on. And then we've got other people who are saying that, that it's the devil, or it's evil. And really they're talking about their genitals, their lower self most of the time. And if you don't, control those carnal desires, that carnal nature, well, of course bad stuff is going to happen, quote unquote. But that depends on, how you look at it, which end of the polarity you're talking about. Because when you start talking about the 7 hermetic principles, what's down is up and what's up is down, so to speak. You've got to understand that positive and negative, the poles, the electrical current, that we know to be positive and negative, that we, understand to be positive because there's, quote unquote, less electrons, than there are protons and neutrons in the atomic structure of whatever it is you're talking about. And that's what gives it a positive charge versus having more electrons, and that's what's supposed to give it a negative charge based on, common understandings of science, at least my understanding, which I may be wrong yet again. But if we, take those basic principles into understanding and apply them at more advanced levels, we will see them, across the board, masculine, feminine, male, female, you know what I mean? We're coming from a matriarchal society to a patriarchal society. And you look at, those dichotomies and differences, right? When we're talking about the quote-unquote dollar bill, and you look at, the pyramid, which for some people could be considered a phallic symbol, versus the Aquila, right, which could be considered a female, or a woman's symbol. And just to read this page and to show you guys, this is again coming out of lesson book 14. This is talking about the Great Seal. It says the Constitution of the United States is the law of the land, with all treaties in force. These instruments of the law used to gauge and adjudicate any matters of violation, controversy, or infringement between the Moors and the foreign European Christians. Right? The United States has a dual national seal, two sides to the one seal. The Great Seal of the United States, Moors. The Great Seal pyramid on the back of the U.S. dollar bill is the emblem of the Asiatic Moabite/Moorish nation, the ancient ones, the master builders of civilization, mothers and fathers of the human family. The key word to distinguish the two seals is of, right? And part of the reason why we make this distinction, and part of the reason why, you know, we're dealing with estates and trust, and why you see all this killing going on, and why I'm bringing up the Cestui Que Vie Trust Act. Somebody's calling me. Is because they are killing us for ownership of the trust. When you see, because when you walk around with these names of Smith, Jones, and Johnsons, you know, under the 13th and 14th Amendment, you're technically still a slave. You're under human peonage, right? You are technically the property of, you know, the Smith, Jones, and Johnson family, right? Respectively. So you don't have the rights to the property that is quote unquote in your name, right? Because property can't own property by law, right? And especially not someone who's incompetent, right? As a minority, right? Because when it's not what they call you, again, it's what you answer to. So when you answer to being an incompetent minority, then you'll be treated as an incompetent minority, and you will be cut off from your vast estate yet again. But again, in that in that lack of knowing, we're vulnerable as a people, because again, Smith, Jones, and Johnson, they can lay claim to that estate. And like what I read earlier, talking about the Cestui Que Vie Trust Act, 1666, those who were family members, you know, of the deceased, who couldn't find the deceased, or they were so lost or gone at sea, you know, for so long that nobody could find them, the estate, the property in the estate, had to be transferred over. And so the courts, quote unquote, the bench, right, the royal courts, had to come up with a way, had to come up with a process to legally move the property from one title, from one individual's possession to another, from one estate to the next, you know, transfer title of ownership, right? And this essentially, in a nutshell, became known as your chancery courts. But for the sake of conversation, was done through trust, right? Family courts today, in today's terms, you know, they'll do this sometimes there, or in your county courts. Used to be sometimes your consular courts, which they shut down. You know, all the active ones already know why they, you know, when and why that happened. But again, going back to AA 222141, if you have understanding of what that's talking about, we can reestablish our courts once we come together as the body politic, and, you know, do what we need to do on the county level, and the state level, for the national level and the international level, right? But always remember, you know, act locally, think globally, right? Just, you know, just some common phrases and such. But yeah, so we've got to keep in mind how, when, and you know, why we got here to this particular point, because it's going to help us get further in our understanding when we're trying to you know, kind of get over that mental hump, when we're trying to find out why is it they're killing us, you know, at such an alarming rate. Why is it that so many people are getting off with paid leave? You know what I mean? It's because they're getting paid directly out of that trust of the person that they just killed. That's why they're able to afford that paid leave, for starters. they're able to get into that paid leave because the family, instead of nationalizing themselves and, you know, the family's property in the States, they go to a barrister and try to get them to, you know, move their property around within their chancery courts. Of course, you know, to the detriment of the family at the end of the day. And then they end up settling for pennies on the dollar out of an account that they already had ownership to by right of reversion. But, you know, ignorance is bliss. So, you know, you take that 1.2 or you take that 2.4, whatever, you know, millions of dollars of fiat currency, and you just, you know, just kind of sold your rights to the estate for that amount, right? That was your settlement, you know, in lieu of having the whole, right? If some may call it a payout, others may call it a ransom. You know, I call it a pity party, because that's all it's gonna pay for at the end of the day. Is a pity party, because it's not justice. You know, it didn't fix anything. It didn't put anybody in jail. Didn't give anybody time. They didn't have to pay the fine out of their pocket. It was a private, you know, non-judicial, you know, process. And typically it happens outside of court, you know, so it doesn't even, you know, so the facts of the case never see the light of day. And then, you know, you have to sign, you know, what's typically known as a gag order, where the part of the contract in there is that you don't say anything, you're gagged, you know, or else we take all the money back and, you know, with interest or, you know, what have you, and, you know, we hang you by your pinky toe and all the other stuff. So, you know, after the payouts happen, after money happens, everybody goes quiet. You know what I mean? There's nothing to be said. There's no books. There's no movies. You know what I mean? So very rarely is there going to be any precedence legally for there to be anything to change, right? And that's just common sense. You know, if I'm wrong, someone please correct me. If I'm wrong, let me know. Holler at me. You know, get at me in the chat. Holler at me in the, you know, the comment section. But I think that's how it goes, if I'm not mistaken, in 2016. And hopefully it'll change, guys. I'm not just being facetious here. I really want you guys to pay attention to what we're talking about here, because these things matter. These are the things that, you know, kind of get the ball rolling. If you haven't noticed, these are the things that kind of get that light bulb moment going off for people, to be able to maybe, you know, make some different decisions, because you always have choices. You always have decisions. You're never truly, you know, with your back against the wall, unless it's like life or death, right? Because it's typically usually an out. You know what I mean? And there's typically usually a better way, right? But you have to look for it. Okay? So part of what we're looking for here is to, again, have a better understanding and to kind of open up what it means to be a Moor, and, you know, how to be more effective in that, and, you know, what in the world, you know, do Moors talk about when they talk about delegation of authority order? Why is that, you know, why is it that we talk about these things? Why do we harp on these things? Well, it's because if you've been giving certain authority, right? If I'm a principal, right, in a contract situation, and I drafted the contract, I'm the one with the money, right? I'm the boss, so to speak, right? And I have someone up under me who, you know, has certain other capabilities, but I'm necessarily not going to go out there and do that. I might appoint them as my agent to do it for me, right? To complete the task, right? So in appointing them as an agent, you know, based on common sense, I would need to give them some proof that I gave them authority, right, to act on my behalf. Okay? When we talk about the Constitution, right, And like what I read earlier under Article 6, and it talks about, these particular offices are bound by oath or affirmation, right? In that oath or affirmation, I think they have something, something about that oath may say something about, protecting against all enemies, foreign and domestic, right? Realizing that, foreigners or people who aren't from the land naturally, and domestic, or people who are domesticated within the land, could be anybody, for lack of conversation and time, it could be anybody, like anybody could fall under that category, so it's pretty broad, right? But what's going to separate you is your actions, your activity, how you express yourself, when you express yourself, the way you express yourself, you know what I mean? Which a lot of people try to put a lot of parameters on, but most of that is ruled by the Constitution, not by their opinions. Sorry, your opinion's great, as wise as it may be, that's not the law of the land most of the time. You know what I mean? Now, there are opinions that are rooted in the law of the land, but again, your opinions are not the law of the land. They're just opinions. So when we talk about the law of the land, it says that the treaties, right, are the law of the land, and all treaties made and which shall be made, right? So then we back up and we talk about the Treaty of Peace and Friendship, 1787, 1786, give or take, right? And then all the subsequent treaties with the Barbary powers. That's the law of the land, right? Article 25 says, well, there's an article in there that says something about a 50-year land mandate or land grant, right? So for the sake of conversation, let's look at it in the terms of a leasehold, right? So if I've got a leasehold, right, you've got an apartment or, a lease on a land, you've got a 50-year mortgage, so to speak, you've got a certain amount of time that you've got to pay on this to maintain your presence, your ability to reside in the area, right? And for the Europeans being in Morocco, northwest Amexem, their rent payments came in the form of tribute payments, okay? Gold and silver, knives, forks, spoons, and other utensils, bars, and so to speak. But these are poor Europeans. They were just kicked out, from England and everything. They didn't really have too much. Let them tell it. But this is what they were paying to the Sultan, on a yearly basis, or every time a new day ascended the throne, or a new ruler, right? And they got kind of tired of that, and then I'll read this letter to you from George Washington that will tell you in so many words that this is our land, right? He was making these treaty payments, but then also that your boy Georgie was not the first president, right? He was appointed, right? And all presidents are supposed to be voted, into their positions. But he was appointed, right? So, just give me a second here. So, talking about George Washington, I realized, there aren't too many Europeans in history that I can find that are named Washington other than George Washington. I wonder why. But, I'll let you guys do your own, like I said, do your own research, check it out, see for yourself. But, now this is coming from the treaty book. Mine's a little different from y'all's. It's page 53 for me. But I want you guys to see something. I want you to check out the attire that Georgie has on right here, right? Notice he's standing on that checkerboard floor on the square, right? Feet at a perfect 45 degree. He's got the tools for the workshop of the mind in his hand, right? And notice right above him, got that letter G, right? And oh, what is that? What is that above that G? Is that a 5-pointed star in a circle? It's the keystone? I'll let you, all of my more Masonically inclined fellows explain that. So let's get into it. It says, great and magnanimous friend, since the date of the letter which the late Congress by their president addressed to your imperial majesty, the United States of America have thought proper to change their government and institute a new one, agreeable to the Constitution, of which I have the honor herewith to enclose a copy. The time necessarily employed in the arduous task and the disarrangements occasioned by so great though peaceable a revolution, we apologize and account for your majesty's not having received those regularly advised marks of attention from the United States, which the friendship and magnanimity of your conduct toward them afforded reason to expect. The United States having unanimously appointed me the supreme executive authority in this nation, your Majesty's letter of August 1788, which by reason of the dissolution of the late government remained unanswered, has been delivered to me. And the reason why I was unanswered is because they knew better, right? Knew better than to come incorrect, with empty-handed. I have also received the letters which your Imperial Majesty have been so kind as to write in favor of the United States to the Bashars of Tunis and Tripoli, and I present to you the sincere acknowledgments and thanks of the United States for this important mark of your friendship for them. We greatly regret the hostile disposition of those regencies toward this nation who have never injured them, is not to be removed on terms of our power to comply with within our territories there. Within our territories there. And so on and so forth, yada yada yada. I'll just end it there. So the arrangements, right? And they mentioned the treaty in here. The arrangements this going on here, and just at the end he says, "May the Almighty bless your Imperial Majesty, our great magnanimous friend, with his constant guidance and protection." Right. So they know who the Sultan was. They knew the honors that they were dealing with. They knew what was going on here. But for whatever reason, we sit back and in today's times are left with some questions as to what's going on. Like, what does that mean, for today? And that's why I touched on AA222141, because what that means in so many words is that, you had the treaty, some shenanigans happened, for summing up purposes. And around, 56 in the 1950s, the French relinquished jurisdiction over what's, presently known as the Kingdom of Morocco, right? Which, when the empire receded, it receded into what, we modernly call the kingdom. But that from that point, everything in terms of the empire was restored to its, original character, to the heirs. So when you talk about reversionary interest, okay, there's no need for the court to, jump through any special hoops to say necessarily that you've done this or that you don't, have to do that. It just already is. Okay? It just already is. What you're doing is putting the paperwork forth to make your position known that you are making it, your position at this given time to clear up any confusion from, any previous goings-ons and other shenanigans, right? So that now you can step in and move forward as the heir, with that reversionary position, doing what you need to do. So just, putting that out there so that you guys are clear on things. But again, be aware when you're talking about this ex-rail, this ens legis, this straw, you're talking about the Cestui Que Vie trust at the end of the day. You're talking about, that quote-unquote Social Security account that everybody is, that mark of the beast that everybody's talking to, that you have to use to transact business in, so to speak, which the prophet told you not to throw away for a particular reason, right? Because it's going to be used to show proof, to show as proof that you've been involved and caught up in human trafficking. You know what I mean? And woe to those who trying to get a benefit from it, because guess what? You just signed on to be a human trafficker, right? If you're not careful in how you word things and this, that, and the third, and if you're just using boilerplate language without a true understanding of what's going on. So we've got a lot of things to cover in terms of our understanding. We hopefully have covered a lot of ground. I just wanted to make sure that you guys had some understanding as to what trust law was, because as and what reversioner is, because as you're talking about these different things, you're talking about what it means to be a Moor, you're going to have to start talking about these things, because these are the things, these are the activities that we as Moors are presently dealing with in our everyday lives. You know what I mean? We just don't pay attention to it. And we deal with it as Negroes too, but we deal with it from a different aspect. But as Moors, we're dealing with it from the aspect of management, not as the managed, right? We're dealing with it as an elite and not a plebe. Islam, because at the end of the day, this is our vast estate. This is our family business that we have to maintain control and order of at the end of the day. And it really does start at home. You know what I mean? It starts with what you've got at home right now, who's under your roof with you. You know what I mean? That's where it starts. It's, your family. And then it just kind of grows from there. When you reattach yourself with the family of nations, Islam. So, it's 7:52. We had some technical difficulties in the class space this evening, so I don't think we're gonna be getting too many questions. But for all those who are catching this on the back end, as always, feel free to send us your questions and comments as well as concerns, so that we can address those in a timely manner and hopefully get to them and possibly get to them in class. And just so you guys know, going forward, we're gonna have a more ad hoc basis. We may or may not have class next week, depending on how things go. Like I said, there's a lot of stuff going on in the background, and I just want to make sure that everything is being taken care of, decent and in order, and everything is getting its proper amount of attention and time. So we're just gonna play it by ear, guys. Check us out in the active space. Let me know what you're thinking. Let me know what your thoughts are. If you just joined us, thank you. We're so glad that you're welcome. And so glad to welcome you here with us. And we just hope that you grow with us as we grow, and intend to do more things and hopefully become more effective in what we do. So with that, it's 7:54. I think I'm gonna go ahead and go on and close it out for today. Like I said, you can reach me. How you guys know how to reach me. Make sure you get with Sister Sharice if you want to get linked up on to Active Space or the more learning forum within the Active Space, and get caught up with things and all the past classes. We're gonna have some more stuff coming out on YouTube, some more videos going up pretty soon here, so look out for that. And just get ready, man. If you guys aren't already studying, remember, study is the motto. That's the phrase that pays. Shouts out to all the Moors in Pittsburgh, who went for the conference this past weekend. It was wonderful. I heard, had some hiccups here and there, but nothing the active Moor couldn't handle. So shouts out to them. Shouts out to my Khalifa Moors with the Moor Unity clothing line. This already out. Go check it out. Go look it up. YouTube, Google. Moor Unity clothing. A lot of great stuff coming out of coming from the active Moors. Renowned Royalty. Go check it out. You know, sister doing a lot of things. You know, if you're already on the active space, check out the Astrologics application. You know, a lot of great stuff going on with that. Updates, just so you guys know, from MoorisDirectory.com. We just hit a milestone. Woo! You know, 2,000. All right, 2K. 2,000 people have now downloaded the Active Moors app, right? So with that, you know, thank you guys. Awesome. You know, if you guys want to support it, you know, always make sure you just go check it out. You know, if you like it, if you love it, support it. MoorisDirectory.com, ActiveMoors.com. Again, shouts out to RVBayPublications.com. Of course, we want to thank, you know, Sister Roz, Mariah, Sister, Brother, and forgive me if I'm forgetting names, because I'm always, you know, off with things. But, you know, the wonderful people over there, RV Bay and Publications, Canaan Land Moors, Khalifa Moors, Khalifa Media, Rami Salam Ill, another active Moor out there doing this thing out in San Francisco, I believe, or Oakland area, Oakland, California. Sorry, Rami, Oakland. So you know, we got Moors all over the place, and then of course we got all our Moors in Australia who were checking in this past week. You know, love the work you guys are doing. All the Moors in Puerto Rico out there. You know, I see the Moors, you know, out there. Brother Obey, shouts out to him. Out there in Puerto Rico, they demonstrating, doing a lot of big things. You know, the government. If you guys have been paying attention, they went bankrupt. The U.S. bankrupted their private corporation, shell corporation known as Puerto Rico, recently, and you know they're going through a lot of financial turmoil. But you know, got our prayers and wishes with those brothers and sisters out there fighting for the cause. Of course, you know, with all of the more local events going on in Tulsa and Charlotte, North Carolina, if I'm not mistaken, and I may be wrong, you know, with locations, because there's a lot of stuff going on, and I'm just kind of going off the top of the head in the cuff right now. But you know, definitely want to give our condolences and our prayers and best wishes to the families for all those who you know got lost in the struggle this past week and this past month, named and unnamed, because we know there's a lot who were unnamed in the struggle, who were fallen. And honestly, you know, guys, you know, a lot of people are wondering, you know, what are my thoughts, you know, what were my feelings. Honestly, I hate to sound cynical, but you know, this is the same thing, you know, we've been telling y'all was gonna happen. You know what I mean? And I was trying to stay away from, you know, talking about these things, but obviously they're pertinent and, you know, time necessary, right? Now, this is coming out of Rex 84 or TM-SW7905.1, King Alfred Plan, right? October 19th, 1969, Executive Order number 11490. Okay. And for those who have it, you know, you guys are familiar with the letter, and I want to read some of this into the record so that you guys are aware, right? And this is just something, because I'm in closing, just a couple of things. So this is a letter to, I believe, to the Attorney General, or to the Attorney General, dealing with the Department of Defense. Preliminary memo, right? And this is coming from the note on page 374, right? Which, you know, Taj has already read this before and such, and, you know, Brother Cujo has mentioned this before, you know, other people, you know, other Moors have mentioned this. But I just wanted to, you know, read this into the record so that people are very clear as to who's who, based on activity, not words. Infiltrated organizations under surveillance. 1. The Black Muslims. 2. Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee, SNCC. 3. Congress of Racial Equality. 4. Uhuru Movement. 5. Group on Advanced Leadership, GOAL. In parentheses got GOAL. 6, Freedom Now Party, FNP. 7, United Black Nationalists of America, UBNA. 8, the new Pan-African Movement. 9, the National Urban League, NUL. 10, the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People, NAACP. 11, Committee on Racial and Religious Progress, CORAP, or CORARP. Note, at the appropriate time, to be designated by the President, the leaders of some of these organizations are to be detained only when it is clear that they cannot prevent the emergency. Working with local public officials during the first critical hours, all other leaders are to be detained at once. Compiled list of minority leaders have been readied at the National Data Computer Center. It is necessary to use the minority leaders designated by the President in much the same manner in which we use minority members who are agents with central and federal. Right? And we cannot, until there is no alternative, reveal King Alfred in all its aspects. Period. Minority members of Congress will be unseated at once. This move is not without precedent in American history. All right? Attorney General Preliminary Memo, Department of Defense. This memo is being submitted in lieu of a full report from the Joint Chiefs of Staff. That report is now in preparation. There will be many cities where the minority will be able to put into the street a superior number of people with a desperate and dangerous will. He will be a formidable enemy, for he is bound to the continent by heritage and knows that political asylum will not be available to him in other countries. The greatest concentration of minority is in the Deep South, the Eastern Seaboard, the Great Lakes region, and the West Coast. Right? So they already know who you are. They already know, your capabilities, right? And it was interesting. It was so interesting, very, very interesting, how in North Carolina they had, a group of faith leaders, community leaders come together and they were talking, and it was so interesting when they cut out, and I went online to watch the rest of it, that they weren't going to follow. And when they did that, they mentioned something, and they were talking about the rioters, and they were saying, hey, basically in so many words, if you're going to test some stuff up, test some stuff up that we don't own. You know what I mean? And I was like, test some stuff up we don't own. Why? Why tear up anything? And then, of course, if you have no better thoughts, if you have no other idea as to how to take out your frustrations, if you just have all this raw energy in motion, of course the next best thing is to be destructive. But you've got to keep in mind, most of these companies have got insurance. You know what I mean? Most of these companies understand taxes, and there's something in taxes called a write-off, or a loss, and you can write those losses off to account for certain profits that you may want to not pay taxes on. So in so many different ways, it could work out to my benefit as a business owner if my business, if out of my chain of businesses, so much of my property or so much of my inventory is lost due to damage, due to fire, act of God, right? Because at the end of the day, my insurance is going to give me a payout, right? But then when you ask some of these grand sheiks about what happened with the Moorish stock, or what happened with the Moorish insurance companies, they all button lips about that. You don't hear nothing about that. You don't see anything. You don't see any Moorish insurance companies out there anymore. And I wonder why. Anyway, committee report. So I guess this is comment O. Survey shows that during a 6-year period, and this is why you got to use mind over matter, all right? Survey shows that during a 6-year period, production created 9 million objects, or 1,500,000 each year. Production could not dispose of the containers, which proved a bottleneck. However, that was also 20 years ago. We suggest that vaporization techniques be employed to overcome the production problems inherent in King Alfred. So they don't have to take people to gas chambers in 2016, people. They've got vaporization techniques. And if you were paying attention at all, right, to the Occupy Wall Street or to like any of the protests that happened out west, or, you know, any of the major protests they had in Ferguson, right, and you saw what looked like news vans or like Bearcats, and they had these satellite dishes on the top. Well, those satellite dishes have a technology in them that's similar to HARP, but it operates at a smaller, supposedly more minute scale. And, you know, the effects are supposed to make you nauseated, you know, and whatnot, and have a headache or instant migraine, and you feel, you know, like you got to throw up and all this other stuff. What really all it's doing is cooking you from the inside out, you know what I mean? It's like a portable microwave that they point at people to disperse crowds, right? But, you know, I haven't seen any tests, and I would love to see some tests on what prolonged exposure would do to the human psyche as well as the human body. And I think if those tests are out there, they probably drive you crazy, if not, you know, insane or something. But I'm sure they're out there. You know, I'm sure they're out there. I'm just, you know, I don't have them right in front of me. But these are things that we need to pay attention to when we talking about, you know, protesting, and we're talking about these quote unquote acts of civil disturbance and civil unrest. You know what I mean? I'm more so, you know, in line with the boycotting, you know, side of things, because economics and economic freedom is way more important to somebody who lives off of economics, right? Because as poor people don't really live off of economics. We live off of subsidies. That's not real economics, because economics involves, you know, a will to do something or to be industrious. Subsidies just require you to, you know, just kind of be in an indigent position. And as long as you can maintain that level of indignation, you know, as long as you can stay indigent, you can qualify for the benefit of an indigent or a person who cannot do for themselves, which is totally insane at the end of the day, because you're never going to get, you know, people who are able to do for themselves when they're running around, you know, working all the darn time, or, you know, trying to work at not working, you know, trying to get around the system, basically, in so many words. But it's 8:08. I'm not going to go for another 30 minutes. I'm going to let you guys, you know, marinate on that, so to speak, until next time. Peace and love, guys. Islam. Peace and love, peace and love. And you see clearly crowns. Lots of, you know, royal guard, right? So, we're talking about an office in the Isle of Man. So let me just go back and read this particular definition. Not the Black's Law 4th, but just from this particular, you know, little link right here from, you know, the social media post, right? Moors, quote Moors, right, all caps, and let me show you guys what I'm reading, right below there. Show you guys, zoom in. See that right below there? You know, if you follow me on Instagram, you'll see it. It's all up there. Anyway, Moors in the Isle of Man who summon the courts for the several sheddings are the Lord's bailiffs, called by that name, and every Moor has the like office with our bailiff. So the like office, every Moor has the like office with our bailiff of the 100. King's description of the Isle of Man, right? And then we jump over here to the Black's Law 4th edition. It says, an officer in the Isle of Man who summons the courts for the several sheddings. The officer is similar to the English bailiff of 100. Huh. Man, now, when we jump over to Google, right, and just see what they say about what a bailiff is, right, let me just screenshot you guys so you can see it. Just, you know, just for connotative, you know, references. A bailiff is a noun, a person who performs certain actions under legal authority in particular, right? This says North American, an official in a court of law who keeps order, looks after prisoners, etc. Now, etc. would imply that there's more to it, wouldn't it? Isn't that what that means? That there's more to the job, right? Etc. And let's see if I can find it right quick. If not, we're not going to press it. But I just want to, show that to you guys, and then let's jump down. Latin original. So its origin was Latin. Bejulus, carrier, manager. Old French, bailiff, Middle English, bailiff, right? Going all the way. And then you go and look on a map, and you see something over there, quote unquote, near England. And you may just leave it there if you are not more studious or don't have the eyes to see, the ears to hear, so to speak. But just one thing I really wanted to touch on, and kind of read to you guys from this post, and hopefully you guys can see it on the screen, because it is kind of small. Shout out to ShyDiddy26 on Instagram, always dropping the knowledge. But I'm gonna try to show you, the picture and everything after I read this to you guys. But I just wanted to try to get this on the record, right? So it says, quote, Moors in the Isle of Man, who summon the courts for the several sheddings, comma, are the lords bailiffs, comma, called by that name, and every Moor has the like office with our bailiff of the 100. King's description, Isle of Man, right? And then it says, taken from Law Dictionary explaining the rise, progress, and present state of the English law, defining and interpreting the terms or words of art, and compromising copious information on the subjects of law, trade, and government. Originally compiled by Giles Jacob, corrected by and greatly enlarged by T.E. Tomlins of the Inner Temple Barristers at Law, the second edition, with considerable additions in 2 volumes, volume 1, 1835, right? And so then it's got this little picture here, which let me, try to lighten it up here. Make sure that you guys can see the screen. Right, so let me hold it up just so you guys can try to see the picture, right? So check that out. Now look what they got on, right? And I'm gonna find a way to get this up on ActiveSpace so you guys can see this. But check that out. Look what kind of outfits they got on, right? For all y'all on the YouTube, look at this. What does that look like? See turbans. See some fezzes. The quote unquote Arabs. But now, from Europeans on a mass scale, was really just, kind of beginning in terms of being an idea. Because prior to that, who was ruling in this era prior to 1492, right? Go back and find that out. We already know it was the Moors. But really, go back and find out how they got there. Really look at, how Muhammad came. Look at what Jesus was talking about in Revelations and see how those prophecies from Jesus were carried out by Muhammad and later carried out, further by the prophet, Noble Drew Ali. So, when we talk about Moorish science and we talk about it being a complete idea and understanding of things, it's going to take, time to get around that, that circle, to get around those degrees. And, in previous conversations that I've been having with Moors, there's been a lot of issues with, Masons and or Eastern Stars, right? So with that, keep in mind, and I'm going to, grab a book right quick, but I just want you guys to keep in mind that the Moors originally gave the science of masonry to the Europeans, right? We were the original, harbingers or oracle, so to speak. We were the ones who maintained that ancient science in written as well as oral traditions, right? Mainly oral, though, going back, so many generations to the point that it's innumerable. But let me grab this book right quick, and I want to touch on some things that I think may help. You know what I mean? So let's get into it. Just so everybody's on the same page, because oftentimes we get thrown off because we're not on the 8 ball, so to speak, and we miss certain key things in our 3rd grade to 4th grade education, 1st to 3rd grade, kindergarten, all of that good stuff. And it's those basics that oftentimes as adults we miss. And so, just like one more thing, just like being able, just like when they, all right, Islam. So so we're back. So getting back into it with that in mind, you know what I mean? When we're looking at these things going on in the news, and we're saying, oh, they're shooting us down like dogs, you know what I mean? This, that, and the third. Well, based on Romantis Pontifex and Dum Diversas, which I'll pull that up right quick, which is kind of long, which I'll give you guys a chance to look over in your own time. But when you look at these documents and you're able to get a firm grasp of what they're saying in terms of their historical relevance in the timeline that is, world history, you're going to find out that prior to that, there wasn't this big push like you see coming out of Christendom that was able to last this long. There wasn't this mass conversion, so to speak, at the level and at the degree to which that it was carried out in this particular instance, because it was this particular instance, these sets of occurrences that led it led to the fall of Granada, right, in 1492, because we're talking about back in 1452. So it took them almost roughly 40 years, give or take, to implement their particular policy and then to carry it out, right? So let's just round up and say 50 years, give or take. So half a century. So if it takes about half a century, right, for certain changes to happen, well then it might take another half a century for those changes to really solidify. So then if you look at the timeline after 1492 and look at that first 50 years after 1492 and all the crazy stuff that was going on then, and the retaliation and this, that, and so on, you will see again more war, more fighting, but this new level, this newfound thing of the Western slave trade coming from Europeans now, not just from Moors. When they call us minors, right? And we sign these documents that only aliens are really supposed to be signing. And when we get into the legal definitions, we find out that an alien is a foreigner, and we know that a minor is somebody who's technically supposed to be a child, really, in his mind. But they'll denotatively, it's supposed to be someone who's a child or childlike or incapacitated, incompetent, or someone who's quote unquote a youth, or not of age for certain things, or the ages of maturity. But that's all relative to whatever culture, whatever context you're talking about. But for the sake of conversation, let's say 18 and 21, right? For the female, 18 for the females, 21 for the males. All right. But when we're talking about who it is that we are as Moors, we have to understand, and I made a post about this on social media. If you follow me on some of the the different things about the fact that we are part as Moors, right? When you're talking about the national side, right? And you're talking about, hey, you know, we'll back up and we'll talk about, you know, 222-141 and all that good stuff. But just for, you know, for the sake of concept, yet again, we are officers, right? We have certain judicial, you know, administrative or executive, rather, pardon my French. We have certain executive offices, certain judicial offices, and certain legislative offices that, as Moors, naturally, right, we have the right and you know, ability to claim and maintain if we have that consciousness and if we're, you know, studious enough to be able to maintain that, because of course you have to be able to maintain whatever it is that you're claiming to be. Otherwise, you're just, you know, running a fraud. So, Black's Law Dictionary, you know, 4th edition, you know, for those who aren't familiar, Moor, an officer in the Isle of Man, who summons the courts for the several sheddings. The office is similar to the English bailiff of 100, right? So then you say, you know, similar to the English bailiff of 100. Well, you know, that sounds pretty, you know, interesting.